And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about trade rumors. There's a lot of them. Some of the reporting that I have done over the last 48 hours or so has been confirmed by other media outlets. So we will talk about that. We'll talk about some of the targets that I mentioned in the piece that I dropped last night for Substack. I guess I could put that in the comments here for those who want to check that out as well. I'm going to answer your questions. This is a happy hour, so I want you guys to participate in this as well. So I'm going to go check in on the iTunes mailbag, and then I will check in on the comments that I'll be getting throughout the show from Twitter and from YouTube, obviously, for those of you who are here watching live. To those of you who are here watching live, and to those of you who are new around these parts, given the growth of my platform and this show, please do subscribe there at the bottom of this or right below this video that you're watching. That subscription really helps. I want to keep this thing growing, and I want to keep it independent because, as we have found out today, this industry is really going through it. My heart goes out to those who are affected by the layoffs at Sports Illustrated. There is a walkout with the LA Times because of the stuff that is going on over there. I am of the opinion that journalism matters and that sports coverage should remain independent and free from the grimy clasps of the super duper rich who can just shut things down at at their like slightest of whims. So I did go independent, and that's how this is going to exist here, I believe, moving forward. And in order for that to remain the case, I'd appreciate subscriptions to Substack. I'd appreciate subscriptions to wherever you get your podcast for this show when it appears in audible form. Twitter, all of that good stuff. Let's keep this thing growing so that, we can exist on our own and continue to do what we've been doing independently. That's enough of that spiel. Like I said, we are going to start today with the latest as it pertains to, I think, the hottest topic of the day, which is DeJounte Murray and his availability from Atlanta. Hilariously, Chris Haynes made my heart stop, and then I laughed. Kind of like when like you get scared and then immediately you start kind of chuckling or whatever. But Chris Haynes tweeted out a breaking news graphic about DeJounte Murray, that apparently all the news is that the Milwaukee Bucks are interested in him as well. I do think, though, that there is some reading between the lines that can be done in that regard. There are several teams that have shown interest in Murray, and as they should. He's youngish. He's a very good player. He's about to embark on a 4-year extension, and it is a little pricey, but I do think if he's in the right situation, he can more than live up to that contract. And I do think it's a great buy low opportunity to get him away from the poisonous well that is the Atlanta Hawks organization, and specifically an Atlanta Hawks organization headed with their best player being Trae Young. So I will just again outline what I know and what I have been reporting on the front or the negotiations between Atlanta and the Lakers. As I've been saying, I don't believe talks have really picked up since then. I do expect them to pick back up pretty soon as you get closer to the deadline. But, we are now a week or so removed from that time when some in the Lakers organization thought that a deal was close, imminent. I don't know if I would go that far. As I have been told, the negotiations never got to a point where they were talking about pick protections, and that is when a deal is basically done. I don't think it ever got there, but I do think that there was a lot of momentum behind it. And for whatever reason, Atlanta went from being okay with taking back D'Angelo Russell to instead demanding Austin Reeves. And at that point, the Lakers and Hawks broke off their talks. And I don't believe they have reactivated those talks. I do think the timing of this Milwaukee Bucks thing is interesting. It's interesting on a couple of levels, right? One, Haynes is very well sourced in the Bucks organization by way of his relationship with Damian Lillard. So I don't think that he's like making this up. Of course, they're interested. DeJounte Murray is a good player. They need some help defensively on the perimeter because Damian Lillard, Damian Lillard even said coming into the season, yeah, I'll try to be average on that end, is what he basically said. And there have been some struggles on the perimeter there. Going from Drew Holiday, one of the best perimeter defenders, maybe the best perimeter defender. It's certainly the best when the Bucks won their championship, going from that kind of a player to Damian Lillard, who has been a liability defensively basically his entire career. That puts some strain on your defense. And when you consider that, Chris Middleton has taken, I think, a couple steps back athletically, they don't have guys like Dante DiVincenzo anymore. And even Pat Connaughton, I think, has taken a step back defensively. It's really put some wear and tear on their defense. So interest in DeJounte Murray, who at one point he slipped defensively, don't get me wrong, recently, but I do kind of think that has more to do with situation than his actual talent on that end. So like the fact that Milwaukee would register interest doesn't surprise me at all. What surprised me was that giant loud ass graphic that made it look as if the deal had been done already. It's kind of like, anytime you go on to any kind of political talk show, it's always breaking news in the bottom left corner. Doesn't matter what might be going on. The news that they're talking about might be 4 days old, but there's always breaking news down there at the bottom left corner to get your attention. That's what that kind of felt like. And I don't think a team like teams call each other all the time. I reported in for Substack, which by the way, I should again put onto into the comments here for those who are interested. But let's grab that. Let's go over here. Let's put that there and drop that there. But yeah, the Lakers have been super active in these trade rumors. They have called, say, Charlotte about Terry Rozier, I am told. I've heard that they called Portland about Malcolm Brogdon. And I think they are what I would kind of read between the lines here is that they are preparing for a D'Angelo Russell move. We'll see what it all looks like or whatever. But I do kind of think that if you read between the lines with everything that has been reported either by me or other platforms, it is certainly looking like we are down to the end of D'Angelo Russell's time in LA, and the Lakers are trying to find a point guard who brings kind of a steadier hand to the Lakers and to their backcourt. They understand, I think, now that Austin is not quite ready to be a primary ball handler for like 30 minutes a night, even next to LeBron. I think they want somebody to help him or move him over to being more of a connector type player. And by the way, since D'Lo has gone back into the starting lineup, you've seen Austin go back to that kind of a role, and he's looked a lot better. He's been a lot more impactful. So I think, the Lakers are kind of using that data and the data that they gathered last year with the way that Austin played last year. And I think the type of player that they would want to bring in is kind of similar to a DeJounte Murray. It is kind of similar to a Brogdon, a Rozier, those kinds of players who are like, starting caliber point guards that can run their own units. And also importantly, and this is where I think they messed up with Westbrook, they want somebody who can also fit next to LeBron. So I that's why Brogdon, even considering his physical limitations, he's certainly slowed down a little bit. He's on the wrong side of 30 at this point. The Lakers like the idea that he could run his own units, and then he could also step, a little bit off of the ball and provide some shooting and some spacing when LeBron takes over for the last 5 minutes or so of the game. So, yeah, in terms of everything that is out there and everything that I've thrown out there, that's the latest as I know it to be. Again, get your questions in the comments. For those of you who are listening on Twitter, I actually see those Twitter comments in the here on my StreamYard account, so I can address those as well, and we will answer all of those things at the end of the show. Now, what I do want to do here really quickly is pull up what I wrote last night and published last night for Substack on my Substack. That's anthonyirwin.com/substack or anthonyirwin.substack.com. And some of the names that I mentioned, obviously Murray is there, Zach LaVine is there, Malcolm Brogdon, Tyus Jones, Gary Trent Jr., those types of players. I really like Tyus Jones. I do think he's a name to pay attention to moving forward. One minor hiccup there is that he has started this year as the point guard for the Washington Wizards, and I believe he is really liked starting. He was always kind of overqualified, I think, to be a backup point guard in Memphis, and then now I think he's almost underqualified to be, like, he's not quite explosive enough to be a starting point guard on a like championship level team. So if the Lakers do bring him in, they would have to open up some minutes to make him interested in being more of a backup. I do think they view him as a backup, and I think they would use, say, like Gabe Vincent's salary plus some draft capital to go out and bring in Tyus Jones. Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype has been reporting that the Wizards are interested in re-signing him. Again, this is posturing season. I don't really see why they would re-sign him, given that they're in more of a rebuild, and a 27-year-old point guard who is like in that tweener spot between backup and starter point guard. That's not really something that I would build with, but the Wizards clearly aren't exactly the bastion of success in the NBA. So you kind of have to take everything that they put out there with a little bit of reality, because that kind of ineptitude is inherently hard to predict. Other players that I mentioned, that are kind of on the more solid scale here, and I guess we could talk about Zach LaVine in a little bit as well. But again, I've mentioned that the Lakers called Charlotte and talked about Terry Rozier. I've heard that there have been some conversations, internal and external, about Spencer Dinwiddie. I'm less high on that one. They've also called about Dorian Finney-Smith and or Royce O'Neal. And then Dave McMenamin the other day mentioned Colin Sexton. I don't really see that one happening because Utah looks really good again for some reason, and I don't think they would help their direct competition. So we'll see. The Lakers have also shown interest in both Bogdanovich's, Bojan and Bogdan. Bogdanovich has a longer-term contract attached to him, and it is believed that if the Hawks and Lakers were to figure out a DeJounte Murray deal, that perhaps the contract could be expanded to have the Lakers take back some longer-term money, maybe send one of like Rui's deal or Vincent's deal, or like both Vincent and D'Lo, and Jalen Hood-Schifino somewhere, and that third team would provide an expiring contract to Atlanta, and the Lakers would walk away with Murray and Bogdanovich. Those anytime you add the variable that is a third team to any of these negotiations, you're almost better off not reporting on that stuff, because there are too many demands flying all over the place and intentions flying all over the place to really pin any of that down. but I have heard that like potentially expanding the deal so that the Lakers can provide some financial flexibility to Atlanta has also been thrown out there as well. I've heard that the Lakers called Chicago about Alex Caruso. And if that was to take place, that the asking price on Caruso is insanely high. Like, starting point of those conversations is apparently 2 first rounders for Caruso. And it is so high on Caruso. And like, it makes sense. He's a first team all NBA type defender. He's on an insanely cheap contract moving forward. And he's still very much an impact player. So and like, he's one of the few wins that Arturas Karnisovas has had as the head basketball mind in the Bulls organization. So essentially, what the thinking there is across the league is their asking price is so high that Caruso is essentially off of the market. Maybe that changes over the course of the next few weeks, but the Bulls are one of the more stubborn franchises and like dumber franchises in the NBA. And so like they might hold fast here, just like they did last year, right? Last year, it was clear they needed to sell. They did not. They ran it back, and it's been a disaster, just like everybody could have predicted. But yeah, the Lakers have registered interest in Alex Caruso. I've also heard that the Lakers and Kyle Kuzma are both interested in a reunion. Same kind of issue there. The Wizards are also asking for 2 first-rounders for Kuzma. Kuzma makes more than Caruso, so the Lakers would have to send out some meaningful contracts. And like, one issue that kind of runs that the Lakers would run into in trying to make a deal with the Wizards is that you would likely be sending Rui Hachimura's contract, which Rui was already with the Wizards, so I don't know how interested they are in reacquiring Rui. I don't like that's kind of tough. But I do know I don't know how far any of those conversations have gone between the Lakers and Washington as it pertains to Kuzma, but I do know that the Lakers have had internal conversations about Kuz and would be very much open to bringing him back. And from what I've been able to gather from those closer to Kuz, he is very much interested in going back to LA. He got the opportunity to get paid. He did get paid right this last offseason. He's had the opportunity to kind of have his own team and the freedom that comes with that. And I think now, at this stage, if it means more winning, I think he would be very much open to going back to the Lakers. So let's go. Okay, so the next kind of tier of player are like players that you can get for, say, Gabe and Cam and some lower, like the low side of draft capital, right? Second rounders and conditional second rounders and all of that stuff. Heavily protected first rounders. Names like this would be, again, Tyus Jones, I mentioned earlier. But Alec Burks has come up, Monty Morris, Chris Dunn, Lonnie Walker, Luke Kennard, Gary Harris, and players like that. I appreciate that, Schmicky. Let's go this one. I do appreciate the likes. Please do hit that like button as well. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Comment. I appreciate it all. But yeah, I do think, though, that, essentially in the way that I framed it, for those of you who subscribe on Substack, you've seen I essentially, laid it out like poker and approaches to a good hand that the Lakers essentially have. And one way to go about it is to go all in with the hand that you have. Another way to go about it is with a solid raise. You could check, you could call, whatever. And I ranked those players by like category there. And the final category that I have is with checking and weighing out your options here moving forward. And this is one avenue that I think you're going to hear a little bit more about in the next, I would say, week or so, especially so long as asking prices remain so high, where like even Tyus Jones, you have Washington asking for a first rounder for Tyus Jones. So long as those asking prices sit as high as they currently do, and I'll talk a little bit more about why they sit there. Expect to hear a little bit more about the Lakers talking internally, and they already have, I'm told, about sitting on their 2029 pick and having the ability to move 3 first rounders in the upcoming draft. There are some loops that you need to jump through, and some different scenarios that would need to play out there. But long story short, essentially, the Lakers like the idea of holding on to that 29 first. We just saw Pascal Siakam go for 3 first rounders. We've seen, like, I think gone are the days of the Gobert type trade, right? I think the league has kind of resettled itself, and those asking prices are back down. For the Lakers, if they do choose to kind of make moves, more marginal moves on the peripheries of this roster, they like the idea and have talked internally about the idea of, seeing what you can do this year and seeing what you can do with lower level draft capital. Some of the D'Angelo Russell's deal, maybe you deal Jalen Hood-Schifino in there as well. Maybe if the right call comes along, you move Christie, though I would really hold on tight to Christie. I think he's really special. But you essentially see what you can get without touching that 29 first rounder, and then see what you can get in this upcoming offseason when Superstar X lets it be known that they are available, and you can go out and you can trade 3 first rounders, whatever contracts you need to trade, when they have a year less on them, to bring in that third superstar to go into next year with that 3-star model. We know the Lakers like chasing stars. We know Rob Pelinka specifically likes chasing stars. So take that for what you will. All right, let's take a deep breath. Let's calm things down a little bit. The last little tidbit here in this piece, and I'm not always going to do this, so please do subscribe on Substack. But the last couple tidbits here, and a quick explainer on the market as it currently stands. You have, because of the flattened lottery odds, you have more teams that think that they can continue winning and still have a chance at moving up in the NBA draft. Because of the play-in tournament, you have more teams vying for more playoff spots. All you got to do is win a couple of games, and then boom, all of a sudden you're a playoff team. So you have fewer sellers. And then this year specifically, the issue that you're running into on top of those things that are depressing the seller market is you have a bad team and the Golden State Warriors not wanting to acknowledge that it's a bad team because they have Steph on their roster. And like, it's not like they're going to sell, right? Like, it's they aren't going to start heading towards a rebuild so long as Steph is on the roster. So that has somewhat diminished the number of teams here. So you're only talking about a very small handful of teams at the bottom of the standings who are realistically getting ready to trade pieces or to sell off pieces. You look at the standings, and I'm pulling them up here. Brooklyn is considered a seller in the East. Toronto also considered a seller. I mentioned Gary Trent Jr. That's somebody the Lakers, I'm told, like quite a bit. Charlotte Hornets, Washington Wizards, Detroit Pistons. So it's a little clearer in the East. You also have the Hawks in that kind of class of seller as well, even though they're in the play-in. But you look at the West, the Spurs aren't going to give the Lakers any pieces to improve their roster. So, like, you can't really consider them one of the sellers if you're the Lakers. Portland is a seller. And I did see that Jovan reported that the Lakers have registered interest in Jeremy Grant, which I hadn't had so far. So shouts to Jovan for hitting that. Memphis is a seller as well. Luke Kennard is somebody I talked about earlier. And then you have the Warriors, who, like I said, aren't your typical seller. And then you have the Rockets, the Jazz, and like the Kings, where none of those teams are, I think, going to be actively making their rosters worse as they currently sit in the actual play-in spots or within, earshot of those spots. So the market right now, like, and part of the reason asking prices are so high is because there are so few sellers and so many buyers. And as such, for the Lakers, I don't know if I want to overpay for Tyus Jones. I don't know if I want to overpay for DeJounte Murray, right? Like, overpaying, in my opinion, would be sending Austin Reeves there. I know the Lakers just flat out don't want to do that, and I don't blame him. He's a good player on a great contract, and the sense is that the Lakers think if they wait this thing out long enough, they might be able to get Murray without him. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here, and there's going to continue to be a lot going on here in the weeks leading up to February 8th. But as it stands right now, and this is the thing that I always say with all of my reporting, especially this time of year, what I just said is real and true as of 3:20 Central Time on a Friday afternoon on January 19th. This stuff changes fast. It really, really does. And anybody who says like they can predict the future here is flat out lying to you, and that is not what I'm going to do. I relay what I know. I relay the things that I am comfortable relaying, but I do so with the disclaimer that all of this stuff is very much subject to change. All right, let's go through some of the questions that we have gotten. We'll start with the iTunes mailbag. And again, the best way to get your questions or topics on the show is to leave them in the form of a 5-star review on iTunes. So let's go. All right. So BBully16 writes, hey, Anthony, nice revisionist history on the last podcast. Now it was Rob Pelinka who ran Vogel out of LA. I can dig in archives and find plenty of shows where you were helping run him out too. It's so funny that since LeBron came to LA, that every year it's the coach's fault or the roster's construction. Wake up. This happens on every LeBron team. He's the common denominator, and your fanboyism isn't allowing you to see it. First it was the kids in Walton, then Vogel, then Russ. Now it's Ham. The kids, minus Lonzo, seem to be doing just fine. Walton is on the Cavs staff. They have a better record. Russ is looking fine with the Clippers, and Vogel has the Suns looking better than the Lakers. But whatever, you have to tell yourself to avoid the facts. All right, so apparently I'm wearing glasses. So I'm going to answer this one with some fan glasses on. No, that's like, all right, let's go item by item here. LeBron is a common denominator. Yeah, he does hold coaches to a very high standard because his legacy is on the line every single year. Hell, you could go like every other nationally televised game for a while, and his legacy was on the line with each and every one of those shows as well. So I do think there is a common denominator here, and it's the expectations that come with LeBron James, not LeBron specifically. Though I do know that like he doesn't like being coached, and again, I can't necessarily hold that against him because he's smarter in terms of basketball than all of his coaches. All right, let's go with the things that my fanboyism isn't allowing me to see. First, it was the kids in Walton. Walton was such a bad head coach. Luke Walton was such a bad head coach that Brook Lopez literally did not want to go back to the Lakers. He refused to play Julius Randle and Brook Lopez together. Julius Randle was like livid, and he left on bad terms too. Magic Johnson wanted to fire Luke Walton. Part of the reason Magic wound up stepping down was because he felt like he couldn't fire Luke Walton. But sure, yeah, totally. All LeBron's fault. The kids all doing really well. Yeah, they're talented kids. The Lakers were drafting high in the draft, and they have a great scouting department. I wouldn't hold it against LeBron that he wanted to turn those guys into Anthony Davis when, oh, by the way, they turned Anthony Davis and that trade for Anthony Davis into a championship. Like, what are we doing here? All right, then apparently I was running Vogel out of town. I will say, I don't think Vogel did the best job that he could have done with that roster. I also don't think that he was set up to succeed with that roster. Vogel likes a big, athletic, versatile defensive team. He had a small, not versatile, not physical, tiny little team that had like no team defenders on it, right? Remember that was the year that Vogel, the year before Vogel got fired, that was the year that we sat around and said, oh, just you wait. Can't judge this team until Trevor Ariza comes back. And you can't judge this team until Kendrick Nunn makes his first appearance for the Lakers. Like, that all happened. Vogel didn't make that roster. Pelinka did. And by that time, by the way, LeBron had stopped pushing for personnel power, and he didn't make that roster really either. So, I it's not revisionist history to say that like the Lakers kind of sort of ran Vogel out of town. All right, the Russ aspect of this. Russ is playing so well with the Clippers that it's somehow LeBron's fault that it wasn't able it didn't work in LA or with the Lakers with Russ. Russ was making $47 million a year. That takes up so much of your cap that it makes it impossible to surround him with the solid types of role players that you need to make up for Russ's deficiencies. For the Clippers, Russ is a veteran minimum player or close to it. And as such, the Clippers can surround him with a whole bunch more talent than the Lakers were able to. So, of course, Russ looks better with the Clippers. What are we doing? All right. I think I've made my point. Let's go here to I'm going to take these off because I cannot continue to be blinded by my fandom. Let's go to the very, very top here and find let's find your guys' questions. Starboy asks, level of interest on Bruce Brown. The Lakers have, I should have mentioned this. The Lakers have, according to reports and according to what I'm hearing, registered interest on Bruce Brown. They wanted Bruce Brown back in the offseason, thought they were getting Bruce Brown, and then then the Pacers stepped in and made an offer that the Lakers couldn't match, and Brown went and got his money, as he should. And now that he is potentially available from Toronto, the Lakers have made a call to see what that would cost. The problem is, so has like half of the contenders in the league. So that is going to be an expensive acquisition as well. But I will say that the Lakers have registered interest, and for good reason. I've always loved Bruce Brown's game. Actually, you could probably go back, if we're doing the whole revisionist history thing, you could probably go back and the year that he was a free agent and the Lakers signed, was it Nunn? I think it might have been Nunn. Whoever it was, but the year that Denver signed Bruce Brown, I was really hoping that the Lakers would sign him instead. And look, he won a championship for Denver. Let's go, Brian Fritz. I know the Bulls are hesitant to tear it down, but what is Caruso's value around the league? What would it realistically take for a team to get him? So I talked about this already. His value around the league is different than his value to the Bulls, right? If his value around the league was as high as the Bulls currently have it, he would have been moved already. So clearly the Bulls covet him more than teams around the NBA. And look, I love Caruso. Those who've been listening to this show and subscribe to the show or taking in my content for however long you may have been would know that the day that they let him walk, or in the days leading up to the Lakers letting him walk, I was losing my effing mind. Like, especially considering they lost him for nothing. And I've been doing some production for the Heat Check with Trista Crick, also on the Odyssey platform. She had a stat in her show that aired today about THT, and apparently he has gotten like 12 DNPs recently, and the Jazz are 12-0 in those games. That is the player that the Lakers chose to invest in over Alex Caruso. By the way, they didn't have to choose between the two. They could have brought him back. They chose not to do that because of luxury taxes at a time when the Lakers were like vying for championships. It was all bad. Everything that went into that is bad. And that's part of why the Lakers, by the way, are so adamant about not trading Reeves, is that like they've made their mistake there in the past and they don't want to do so again. But I don't think that Caruso's asking price is at a decent enough or logical enough place to go out and make a run at him. It's a bummer, but it's that's just kind of the reality of the situation. Japleen Singh asks, do you think if we can get Murray, we can also go for Gary Trent? Yeah, no. I'd have to look because it depends on how many contracts the Lakers send out for Murray. Gary Trent Jr., I believe, is making, what is he making this year? I got to go find Raptors. And Gary Trent Jr. is making 18.5 mil. The Lakers could send out, like, depending on the contracts that the Lakers send out. So let's say the reported deal that I have been talking about goes through, where it's D'Lo, it's Jalen Hood-Schifino, and a first rounder for Murray. That means that the Lakers would have Gabe Vincent's 10.5 mil to work with. You'd have Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, and Cam Reddish. Their contracts that you could stack up on. And I guess there you could throw together as much draft capital as you can. And I guess technically it is possible that you go out and get both. But it really depends on the returns or what you send out for Murray first. And I would probably expect the bigger deal to happen first, and then the smaller deals to for the Lakers to move on to the smaller deals from there. Laker fan writes, any chance of the Lakers getting Royce DFX or Lonnie for Gabe Rui and 2 seconds? As of right now, I've heard that the Nets are expecting a first rounder at least for Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a very good wing. Wings are a very hot commodity in this league. And so like the 2 seconds part, I don't necessarily think that would go over. I'd have to check the contracts also. But like if that, I haven't heard anything about that trade package yet. And if the Lakers were to do something involving Rui, they would pursue moving D'Lo first. So take that for what you will. Lakers. Oh, sorry. That's just my Substack. Make sure you guys subscribe to that. All right. So let's go to the next one. Apparently Dylan gifted 1 Lakers Lounge membership. So I will look into how somebody can pick up that gift. I will say for those, as we get more VIP members here on the lounge, the hope is to be able to bring people on stage and have them talk to me throughout these shows and go back and forth, like actually on camera. So if you're interested in doing that, look into becoming a VIP member, which is right around the place that you could subscribe. If you do both, I'd really appreciate it. But that is something that as this show and as this platform grows, that I would like to be able to do in the near future, like as soon as next week, if we're able to do so. Let's go with D. Steven asking, Anthony, would you guess that the Lakers are really willing to bet on Brogdon's health? This is a great question. So, and it's a complicated one. The Lakers are very, very nervous, like maybe more nervous than any other team in the league about acquiring players with injury riddled histories, right? As an example, Cam Whitmore was somebody who a lot of like draft people really, really liked. I asked about the process that went into that, and I was told that Whitmore wasn't on the Lakers' radar because of that injury history. So, and like when you consider the injury issues that the Lakers have dealt with for the last forever, it kind of makes sense. Now, where this gets a little tricky with Brogdon is he has his own injury history beyond what he's been dealing with this year. And that is always worth kind of keeping an eye on. A lot of it is like kind of fluky injuries or whatever, but still the Lakers are cognizant and aware of that injury past. Problem with this year, though, is that like everybody around the league knows that the Blazers have been super careful with Brogdon, like overly cautious with him because they knew that eventually they were going to have to probably trade him to continue their rebuild. And you can't do that if the guy is hurt. So the amount of games that he has sat out or not been available for, all that stuff, rested for, whatever, that has a lot to do with what Portland is going through organizationally, and maybe less to do with what Brogdon is dealing with physically. So I know that the Lakers are aware, and I know that it's something that gives them a little bit of pause, but it's also something that makes him available for less. And like, I wouldn't give up a first rounder for Malcolm Brogdon personally. And I know the Blazers are expecting that because he's been such a positive force in that locker room. But I wouldn't give up a first for Brogdon, given his injury stuff and like the impact it's had on him defensively. So if I'm aware of it, you can be sure the Lakers are as well. Let's go. I already answered about Bruce Brown. I do think that the Lakers would have interest there, have had interest there as well. This is a good one. So Johnny Sanchez asking about Gordon Hayward in the buyout market. I have to eat a little bit of crow here. I had talked on a previous show about my skepticism that Gordon would actually accept a buyout. I should not have questioned my dude Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports. His reporting is right. The teams are really monitoring what happens with Hayward here as the Hornets fall further and further and further from contention. They are basically born out of contention, but still, like, as they slide further and further, and as you get deeper into the season, Hayward might, at this stage of his career, prioritize winning. The nice thing here about the Lakers and their pursuit of Hayward is that they would not have very much competition. Teams that are above the second apron, the Clippers come to mind, the Warriors, I believe the Celtics also. Those teams can't sign him because of where they sit on the cap sheet. And on top of that, the Lakers have an extra 1.8 million that they could offer him above the prorated minimum because they didn't use their entire non-taxpayer mid-level exception to, or their taxpayer mid-level exception to Gabe Vincent. So they have some extra money they can offer. Depending on the moves that they make at the deadline, they might have wing minutes available that they can offer. And they have the opportunity to go and chase a championship to offer to him as well. So I do know the Lakers are one of those teams keeping an eye on Hayward's market. And my bad, Jake. I shouldn't have questioned you. Let's go. Anthony, why do you continue to post the best looking food pictures knowing that I am starving? You know what? That's my bad. I love cooking. And look at me. I clearly love eating. So I'll be careful though. I won't do it. I won't do it during certain hours when maybe we shouldn't be eating. How confident are you realistically that an Atlanta and Laker deal actually transpires? Oh, man, this is where it's tough because once talks kind of reach a stalemate, it's kind of hard to pick them back up without any new information to process. And yeah, Haynes saying that Milwaukee is apparently interested is new information technically, but Milwaukee doesn't really have anything better than the Lakers could potentially offer. And so the Lakers would just kind of look at that and be like, cool, our offer is still our offer. Now, things might change if you start to hear about some teams that are showing interest that have more to offer and that are more willing to offer more than the Lakers. And maybe that lights a fire on under the Lakers' butts to get something done here. But I think the Lakers are more comfortable with their roster than you would need to be to go out and like really up your offer for Murray, especially when there's so much time between now and the deadline. So to actually answer the question, how confident am I? I would say it's still slightly more likely than that it happens than it doesn't. But again, that is with all kinds of somewhat contradictory information and all kinds of posturing, and with a lot of time between now and the trade deadline for things to change. With Murray in and D'Lo out, do you expect another move to address shooting? Yeah, the Lakers, Jovan has been very good on this for The Athletic, talking about the Lakers' pursuit of shooting. They know that they need to get better on that because they are going into all of these games with with a mathematical disadvantage going in. So that's why like the Luke Kennards, the Tyus Jones, the Boyan and Bogdanoviches, like those types of players are very much on the Gary Trent Jr., very much on the Lakers radar. Um, whether they make a Murray move or not, they know that they have to add shooting. So whether that happens on the trade market or the buyout market, that is something that the Lakers are really kind of keeping an eye on. Let's go with, I don't know if that's true. I don't think Johnny Sanchez is saying that Tyus no-showed in the Lakers series. If I remember correctly, he played pretty well. He's a very good player. He's a very solid point guard. All right. So how does a trade of D'Lo affect Austin because of how close they are off the court? This is one of the bummers of the way that that business is done there, right? Those two are very close. They golf together. You look at the way that they interact on a basketball court, on the sideline, all of those things. They really seem to enjoy each other's company. I can't wait for the buddy cop movie between the two of them that needs to happen. But as far as like, what would it, how would it affect Austin? I think he also understands how this business is run. And everybody in that Lakers locker room understands the way that D'Lo signed his contract, right? He waived his no trade clause when he signed the deal. That indicated to basically everybody that this was probably going to be a short-term relationship here with the Lakers again. And look, he has played so well lately that he's made, and this is what I always used to tell kids when I was coaching. If a kid would come and ask me for minutes, for more minutes, I would say, make me have to make a tough call here, right? Make me sweat out a decision. And if D'Lo continues to play that he is right now, and the way that he has since he was reinserted into the starting lineup, he forces them into a very tough decision. I still think I would swap out him for DeJounte Murray because of the defense and some of what defense offers you in terms of consistency on a basketball court. But yeah, I think Austin, just like everybody else in that Lakers locker room, and just like everybody else basically in any locker room understands, being traded, being moved, free agency, being, having guys waived, all that stuff is just kind of part of what comes with the territory. Connor Moreno asks a good question here. Do you see any possible path to the Lakers keeping D'Lo should he continue to produce the way he has been recently? Yeah, maybe. It's looking obviously a lot more realistic now than it was, say, like a week or two ago. But even still, I think the concern remains no matter how well D'Lo plays in the regular season, he was so bad in that Denver series that really stuck in a lot of people within the Lakers walls heads. So almost no matter how well he plays in the regular season, it becomes impossible to not look back and remember the playoff shortcomings, not just last year, but in his previous stops, right? For Minnesota, he had to be benched for Patrick Beverley. For Brooklyn, he struggled in the playoff series that he helped that organization get to as well. So maybe he plays so well that he shows that, but I think at the end of the day, the Lakers are still, always going to be very nervous when it comes to D'Lo because of what he looked like in that playoff series. Not sure if you covered this, but isn't the DeJounte Murray news overblown? Is Atlanta just leveraging the Lakers to get a better deal? I actually think it's in reverse. I think the Hawks are trying to leverage other teams to try to get more out of the Lakers. But what I would say, though, is, and this is worth noting for every bit of reporting I do, and I know I probably shouldn't be in the business of questioning my own reporting here, but the Lakers historically, anytime deals have happened, they come from nowhere, right? The Rui Hachimura for Kendrick Nunn deal last year, out of nowhere. Nobody saw that coming. Even the Russ trade, when they traded for Russell Westbrook, Kyle Kuzma still to this day will tell you that he thought he was going to be a Sacramento King as a part of a Buddy Hield trade. When the Lakers traded Russell Westbrook, that kind of came out of nowhere, even granting that everybody knew they had to make a deal. Remember the year prior, they decided not to trade Russell Westbrook, and even that decision surprised a whole bunch of people. And the reason that is because Rob Pelinka is at the top of, I think, the thinnest front office in the league, certainly close to. And what that means is, like, the thinner your front office is, the fewer leaks there can possibly be. And as such, it becomes harder for people like me to really get a grasp for what, like, is actually about to happen. I have been able to, with a lot of digging, unearth what the Lakers' kind of intentions are on a macro scale. But as you zoom closer and closer and closer in, and as you get closer and closer to an actual deal, it gets harder to nail that down, because Rob has like a very, very select few people around him who are willing to offer up that kind of information. All right, let's go with Gunner is how I'm going to say it. Gunner. One of my like childhood family friends was Gunnar as well. So I don't know if it's Gunnar or Gunnar, but Anthony, I've always thought the perfect trade is for Caruso and Vucevic. Is that even likely? Seems like a stretch. Well, if the Lakers do trade for Alex Caruso, one thing that they can do to sweeten the pot beyond the draft capital that they don't have access at moving, or an ability to move, is you know, financial help, right? So Vooch is on a bigger long-term contract, so you could take him back. You could, if you're interested in rehabilitating Lonzo Ball, you could take his contract back. Obviously, like, the prime example of this is probably Levine, but yeah, a Caruso and Vucevic combination, or that kind of a package would be interesting. I still, like, I cannot stress this enough. The Bulls are asking for the moon for Caruso. Like, it's insane. And it's reached the point here where a lot of the people that I talk to around the league are like pretty sure he's just not getting moved. How optimistic, this is from Pope. How optimistic are you that the Lakers will deal D'Lo? Pretty pretty optimistic. I'm pretty sure he doesn't make it through the deadline. Let's go. Do you think taking Zach and Caruso is possible? The money there is a lot. Like, you're talking about 50 million bucks coming back. So you would wind up having to trade D'Lo, Rui, and Gabe, and maybe more money beyond that to make that money work. And at that point, so essentially, like, one way that it's been put to me a couple times is like, yeah, the Lakers are interested in trading for Levine if he's free, and that just means from like an asset standpoint. But the problem is he's not free. The Bulls still think that they can get positive assets for him on top of the contracts that it would take to land him. And so that's why, like, people around the league are pretty sure Zach probably isn't getting moved this year either. That contract is too big. There are too many years still attached to it, and the Bulls are pretty steadfast in their ignorance as far as like what his value around the NBA currently is. All right. All right. So Big Drop says, I thought the Lakers have 4.9 mil in cap space. So that's the amount of space that they have under the hard cap. They have 1.3 million bucks in the like between them and the luxury tax. And if they are able to shed 1.3 million bucks without, getting, if they were able to shed a ton of money somehow, I don't think they're interested in doing this per se, but like, if the Lakers were able to shed, like, let's say $7 or $8 million in a deal and get them well below the luxury tax, then they could add a buyout player and reset their repeater tax. And that is something that I think is worth keeping an eye on as well. But whether it's getting way under it, getting just under it, whatever, if the Lakers feel like they can improve this roster and get under that luxury tax and reset their repeater, they are going to pursue that. You can you go to the back. You could go to the bank with that. Let's go. Daniel Gafford. The Wizards, I don't think are interested in moving him. He's young. He's pretty good. I think they are, like, if you're in a rebuild, you keep guys like Gafford while he's on his rookie deal. Let's go. Man, a lot of questions. Whew. I'm going to try to answer as many of this. So, any chance they could get Bojan and possibly Lonnie Walker? Multiple mid players would be a great haul. Yeah, I think those are the types of deals that the Lakers really like. The idea of is going out and getting guys that don't necessarily require a first round pick. They loved having Lonnie in the organization. I was really bummed that they weren't able to bring him back. Obviously, I'm biased. He's a friend of the show. He appeared on this show last year, but they loved having Lonnie. They saw him perform in the playoffs. He provides a skill set that the Lakers need. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Lakers found a way to bring him back. And I do know that they have checked in on his availability. Problem is, he's playing really well for Brooklyn. Like, he's been really good for them. And it's pissed me off because I was like really hoping that the Lakers would bring him back on a on a cheaper deal. He could have made more with the Lakers than he's currently making for Brooklyn. The problem is, like, he would have had to still take a pay cut to even make that much. And a lot of guys would rather go elsewhere than re-sign at a discount. So let's keep going here. Anthony Jovan mentioned that the Lakers have interest in Bruce Brown. If Toronto let him go, he can only be traded by himself with no other salaries. Yep, all of that is true, and the Lakers are still interested. I think that is just about going to do it here in terms of questions that I haven't touched on already. I think we are good here. If I missed any, I will add them to kind of a list and try to get to as many of them as I can the next time we all go live. But that is going to wrap it for this week. I depending on how my evening goes, maybe I'll hop on All Access Lakers to talk with the guys. Shouts to Shub and shouts to Rome and to Raj for really kind of upping me. And I am not the new Woj. Those guys have a ton of information. I am on a bit of, I've really upped my reporting game up this season, and it's been fun to do so. It's been cool to add that tool to my tool bag. But no, like Woj, Shams, like those guys are at a completely different level, and I'm just trying to climb and dig out a nice little corner for myself in this industry. But thank you everybody for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please like this video. Please like all the other videos. Please subscribe on Substack and follow me on Twitter at Anthony Irwin LA. It's right there. You see it right there. Anthony Irwin LA on Twitter is where you can find me. And until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your weekend. Make somebody else's, and I'll talk to you on Sunday or tonight. We'll see.